Hello from sunny Italy. It is a balmy, I don't know, let's go for 35, 40 degrees. What's the difference at this point, right? And I'm coming to you from the island of Vulcano. Vulcano is one of the 7 alien islands and is clustered around the southernmost point of the continent of Europe. So needless to say, I feel very much off the grid. I feel very much in a position to commune with nature. And I feel very humbled by the surroundings. Today is the first day that I think I feel like I'm here without a task to complete or without a job to do. For the last 2 weeks, Susan and I have been, and here the verb is a little funny, hosting, running, guiding a retreat, the first ever retreat, through the School of Knowing and in collaboration, of course, with Conversations with Spirit. And it's a retreat to usher in, to celebrate the birth of a new course that we are in the midst of remembering and bringing forth to all of you. The course is called the Practice of Isness, and there'll be lots more about that in future videos and in future posts. But right now, I'm mentioning it to celebrate the incredible courage and the will and the tenacity and the acceptance. Sorry, I have an ant on my communing with nature and all. And the acceptance of all those who participated to enter into a space of such undefined parameters with us. Despite me, this experience actually happened. A few years ago, one of the last times I was here, I saw bringing people into this space, to this island, and I saw us doing certain things together. Yes, to enjoy the environment and the experience of being together, but on such another level, a profound level, I knew that the land, this volcano, was to support us in, to say leveling up feels so simple. To say clear is so only a sliver of the experience. It was introducing itself, this land, as an opportunity for us to come together, to converge on a whole new level and to access intelligence on a whole new level and to bring all of that forth through words and through experiences that we could integrate on a human level in this timeline. As simple as that. And a couple of years ago, or maybe it was a year ago, we started talking about it and we're thinking, should we do it? And there was an immense willingness by the people who heard about it to participate. And yet, despite me, it eventually happened. The first time it didn't happen, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but when an experience comes to you that you know is going to be so intense, you may not necessarily jump at the opportunity. And that was me a couple of years ago. I did not jump at this opportunity. I knew I had to move forward with it. To a certain degree I did. We talked about it. We started to vaguely plan things that would be happening, and ultimately those plans came out of my seeing where we would be as a group on the island and the activities that we would be taking part in together. But it didn't happen. It fell through. And yet this year, despite the fact that there was no planning, there was no schedule, there was no itinerary, there was no event coordination, it all happened. And every single thing that I saw us doing those few years ago, we did together, including meditating at sunrise, which is approximately at 5:30 on the island at this time of the year. Meditating at sunrise in a lovely place called the Valley of the Monsters, which is an incredible spot where volcanic matter, so lava that had seeped out of one side of the volcano at a certain time in 1880 something, had formed these beautiful growths of lava that emerged from the sand at this cliff's edge. And people say they look like monsters, like bears, things like that. So that was one of the places I saw us meditating. And the reason why was because there was a presence there. There was an empowered, impactful, immense energy there a few years ago when I went there and for that first time saw us suddenly all there together. And we did it, even though we were being devoured by mosquitoes, and the fabulous citronella spray that I had worked for maybe a minute at a time because I think they're getting used to it by now. Nonetheless, we did it. And the guests stayed at a beautiful 5-star resort just around the corner from that valley, and we ended up spending our mornings from approximately 5:30 to 11 a.m. sitting amidst such beauty, the backdrop and the views, and we'll post all of these so you can see the pictures from the retreat. They were mind-boggling. They were absolutely mind-boggling. How beautiful it was and how possible it is to be in such plenitude and in such a state of abundance together as we very much hand in hand walked into the unknown together. Some of us also went on a trip hiking up the volcano, again at sunrise, because when else, right? Some of us, actually all of us, ended up taking a beautiful boat tour together. We had a couple of boats we rented and we went around the island. And the reason why I wanted to share that particular experience with people was because volcanic land mass is basically a combination of a lot of complex geology. The abundance of obsidian in the land, in the ground, which isn't really ground, what we see above sea level is but the peak of what is a submarine or a subterranean volcano that is kilometers and kilometers high. We just don't see it. And all of that landmass is composed of course, magma and the heat of the Earth's core, but it also has, and of course, a lot of gases. It also has an incredible concentration of obsidian that composes this landmass. And obsidian is, oh my, look at all those ants. Let me just, excuse me. Obsidian is a very, very important, let's call it material. It is technically volcanic glass, and it is the same chemical composition, from what I understand, as pumice, which is a very porous stone that can even float on the surface of water. It doesn't sink, and people use it to give themselves pedicures, and it's very well known. Obsidian, on the other hand, is a type of matter that is endowed with the gifts of sight and imparting upon the one who accesses its powers to show that person what they most don't want to see about themselves. I mean, the definition for a perfect vacation, right? Spend a month on obsidian. So that was another reason why it was really important for us to be in a space like this. And of course, this lifetime has been planned for tens of thousands of lifetimes, so that it would align in just the right way. So it's not as though this is all just a fluke. This is a very, very intentional experience and a very intentional space to be rooted in this timeline. But all of that to say that we just finished the first retreat, and it was absolutely not disappointing in any way. So many things came up, so many books will come out of it, so many conversations, so much will be included into the Practice of Isness before the final books are published. And again, we'll go more into the Practice of Isness later in the School of Knowing as a whole, but what I wanted to talk to you about today was actually something that I experienced this morning on the island. And keep in mind, we're talking about an island that is largely made of obsidian. And being energetically sensitive, I'm very well aware of the things that come up when I'm here, none of which are frivolous or gentle or I was going to say kind, but that's the ego walking in. From an evolutionary perspective, I as an I am presence, I'm grateful, most grateful. I as the ego am sometimes pummeled. Oops. Isn't that funny? Let me fix that. Grape leaf. All right. So, on to the point of this video. Now that everyone has left and is either already home or is in the process of returning to Toronto or New York, my family and I have stayed behind, have decided to stay on this island for another month or so. For many reasons. We have a home here, and it's just a lovely place to spend time in the summer with young children. And my husband grew up here, and there is this level of DNA encoding in him that he passed down to our son. So even just being here in a space where they can both experience the island in their own way is very, very important in anchoring in certain intelligence that is key for them to move forward. And because my husband grew up here, the island and him fused in a certain way, and they had this incredibly harmonious relationship where each time, and I've been here maybe 5 times, 6 times, each time I come, it is this let's just say that this time I called this a forced vacation on many levels, and one of the reasons is because I knew that there were things that were going to be coming out that I needed to deal with, to process, to work through as quickly as possible to clear out, and the island had the ability to help me with that. Not to say that if I were in a city I wouldn't be able to do it, but it would have taken a lot more work on my end to clear out the pollution of the space of city, the grid of a city, to be able to access at this level of purity and clarity. And so one of the things we decided to do once everyone left was to begin to hike the island. And of course we can climb a volcano, and the first time we did that with our son, he was 4, and it was phenomenal, and it's not really all that tough of a climb, and I say that now going through what I did this morning, so keep that in mind. So we bought a map from a neighboring tourist center on another island, and it marks very very distinct paths that you can walk on the island. Sorry, what's up? And so we did one of the trails yesterday, and it was lovely, and it was mostly in familiar territory for us, but it was still great to see all of the views, and we did explore some new neighborhoods. And when I say neighborhoods, I mean clusters of just raw vegetation. And the kind of vegetation you see here is a blend of Mediterranean and desert inspired. So there's a lot of cacti here. There are a lot of thorns and spikes here, and there are also breathtaking flowery trees, and the colors are just magnificent. And mix that with pine trees and grapes. I mean, it's a really beautiful space. It's very rich in flora and fauna. And today we decided to go on a different hike, one that my husband had done when he was around my son's age, around 7 or 8 years old. And he really wanted to share that with us. He saw that it was one of the marked tours, so great, let's do it. I had absolutely no idea what I was walking into, as is very often the case here, so that's not necessarily new. But I was walking into a personal inferno. So this is one of those opportunities that the island has bestowed upon me to wake up to a dynamic that I have been playing out that was in no way serving me or anyone I'm here to assist. But let's put a pin in that and then go to a brief description of the walk. We walked for quite a bit on terrain that was fairly familiar. There were roads that were carved out by bulldozers and roads that cars could drive, so it was an easy terrain for us to walk. And then at a certain point, there was a gate. And the gate wasn't locked. The gate may or may not delineate a property line, but the gate was very symbolic. And I only saw this after, and this happened this morning, so I'm still very much processing. But there was a gate, and once we crossed the threshold of that opened gate, it was open. It was very worn out. It was falling apart, basically, but the structure of it was still there. So it was a gate, and we walked through that gate, and then the terrain completely stopped. It was very challenging to see the path, and the path had been overgrown, and the vegetation changed from being more lush and green to turning into fields of wild chamomile and spotted with wild oregano, and then suddenly it turned into more of a desert landscape, not from the perspective of sand, but from the perspective of these plants that are essentially stalks that are covered with spikes, and balls on top of those stalks, and leaves coming out of those stalks, also equally covered in these dinosaur-sized spikes. Yes? Most of these were at a state of being dried out by the sun. Some of them were still green, but most of them were like a desert sand color. And more of them began to appear the more we walked. We started to see that we were walking the outline of the island, and the island is, of course, just walls and walls of rock. And so we were walking on cliff's edge quite a bit. And at a certain point, we came to the most spectacular view. You could see that there was a beach, a rocky beach, but a stunning aqua blue, phenomenal Mediterranean marine beach. And between us and that beach was still about 40 minutes of hiking, but you could see it. It was just a second, but you weave. And between us and the beach was also a little house. So sorry. And that little house, you can also see if you're touring the island by boat. It's in the middle of seeming nowhere. And it's a famous house. It's a very simple looking house. It was the house of a hermit who came to this island, don't ask me when, to escape. Needless to say that let's just go simple and say the concept of that choice and the concept of living on cliff's edge in solitude was not unfamiliar to me. And I really, really wanted to see this house. We had to go off of the beaten path and walk more through this spiky forest of dinosaur teeth. But there were ways around it, and we were doing a really great job, and we finally reached the house. And I took a video of what it looked like inside. So I'll show that to you now, and then we'll come back and we'll continue with my story. Let's share the view.
It's like you had,
Woo! Sunny. Yeah, that's a cliff's edge. And that's the edge of the volcano mountain. What is it called? Island. And that is where we're going next. Ooh.
afternoon.
So I don't know what you got out of that short video, what caught your eye, what you noticed. The vibe may not have transferred fully, so I'll just share with you my experience of being around that house. Exposed me to a really ominous, stubborn vibe. There was a stiffness, there was a resentment, there was a refusal that lived in that space. And I got that. I know how to connect to that. And the reason I know how to connect to that is because I know why I'm here in this life, in this timeline, in this world at this point. And that's not to say that I've figured it all out, because with action comes clarity each and every time I take that action, whether it is conscious or whether it is like today where I walk into this scenario without realizing what's happening. And my reason for being here, tightly encapsulated into some words, is that I am here to help people remember why they're here, so that they can then walk with purposeful precision into a state of living their life with alignment, actioning that reason for being here, where that reason is encompassed in multiple purposes of one's life, all in alignment with one ultimate reason for choosing to come here, choosing to craft this life. And that's a big part of why I'm here, is to help you remember that. And that's a really big thing to remember. And very often people, after they think about it, realize they may not want to have such clarity on why they're here. And again, that's for another video, but although I know why I'm here on that level, it in no way, that clarity of knowing, that clarity of remembering, in no way makes it all that much easier to do what I'm here to do. And for a little while now, I've been attempting to game the system between me and me. I have realized that the path B's taken, the path from A to B, the most direct, the least twists and turns, is sometimes so intense that you just don't want to do it anymore. You want to be normal. You want to go back to the masses of forgetfulness. You want to have that bliss of not knowing. You want to forget the stuff that once you remember, you can never forget. So I've been in that space a little bit, really just fighting against myself. And at a certain level, considering becoming that hermit again. And being in this space where this hermit lived, seeing the view that he looked out on daily, and feeling the reason behind why he chose to retreat and leave this world while still in this world, waiting to play out the last days and weeks and months and years until he didn't have to be here anymore. I get that. So when I realized the eeriness of this space, I kind of wanted to go. And I knew that my husband wanted to go down to the beach, so I just, let's go, let's do it, let's keep moving. I got what I needed to get out of this. All of these realizations were seeping in really quite slowly, but they were starting to become something I was aware of. So I started to get, okay, that there's something off here, there's something I'm supposed to see here, that kind of thing. And so as we started walking back to where we came from to look for our path so that we could go down to the beach, I found myself in a forest of these spiky cacti towers, these really dried, hard, spiky, scratchy, unwelcoming beasts of plants. I don't even know what they're called, man, but I can't even look at them right now. They're so intensely unwelcoming. And not only that, but I looked up, I realized I was in this field, I mean small, just enough to encompass me really. Of these beasts, I also realized that I was in a swarm of wasps. Now, those who have heard me talk about my experience of being on, I think it's Black Mountain, but it's maybe not called that. It's a mound of obsidian somewhere in California. It was on our way to Mono Lake, so in that area. And remember, connecting that obsidian shows us exactly what we don't want to see in ourselves the most. The fear of bees, the fear of wasps just flooded me that very first time. And for some reason, again, I was hiking with my husband, so we were having very different experiences. He didn't see a bee back then in California, and they were swarming around me, really just activating that fear and ultimately creating an opportunity for me to let it go, but sacred neutral in a space of complete freak out is a little bit challenging. So that happened again today. It happened again today. And to add a new level of fun to the experience, I was stung. And my son was stung. And the moment of panic just started to escalate, and it was a lot. finally we extricated ourselves from this forest of these thorns and started to deal with the pain of the bites and calming us down. And again, my husband had nothing. There was nothing. He was watching and he was helping, but he had no level of disharmony in his experience. He was just looking at us like we're a little crazy, but okay, let's just deal with the crazy. We decided, please don't make us go to the beach. We just want to go home. It was about a 2-hour hike back. We were going to spend half the day at the beach. It was going to be a lovely day, and ultimately it turned out to be quite it was like walking into your own inferno for me. And hiking back was very, very interesting because it was my husband, my son, and myself. And we were scaling walls really, and scaling all of this unwelcoming vegetation. Yes, I'm still very grateful for being here, but at this moment, the island just, it sort of punched me in the face. So I'm maybe not describing it in the kindest way. I started to hear what I was saying. And it was my attempt at discharging a bit of the panic in me at the same time as trying to create a direction for my son to focus on so that we could get out of this situation as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. So I started to say over and over and over again until I heard it. Follow your path. Stay on your path. You're fine as long as you're on your path. Follow your path. Stay on the path. Then I heard it. Then I connected the resistance to following my path. And I connected the resentment toward parts of my reality and my interaction in this world. I started to connect all of these things. The house, the vibe of the house, the reason for that hermit, becoming a hermit in this house, my journey in the direction of becoming that hermit, realizing, what are you doing? And then realizing that when the margin of error is small, veering off path, because you think you can game the system and just close your eyes, plug your ears, la 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 la. I can't hear it. I don't remember anymore. You can't unremember what you've remembered, right? So pretending that I could wasn't working, but pretending that I could was still something that I, on some level, was insisting on. So this experience was this massive wake-up call that said, yes, you can. You've done this before. Do you really want to do it again? Being a hermit and extricating yourself from society is not why you came here. You can still choose to do it because you are in a place of free will, but it's not going to be fun. Again, this is not for the faint of heart, this journey, and this is most definitely not a journey for the mind. So if there are things that I've said that don't necessarily connect or that are not linear, let the need for linearity and rationality go, especially if you want to continue listening to these videos. So we finally got home, and I was connecting all of these dots, and I wanted to share them with you. In no way because I like the sound of my voice. In no way because I want to engage with social media, because I want to have lots of followers. It's actually for one reason that I'm sharing this. This world is composed of the fiber of counterintention. If you are here to be of service, it likely means that you are meant to be the counter to the counterintention. Not by destroying the world, but by working within it to help people wake up to the reality of the disempowering nature of this world as it is and what they can do to get themselves out of it. kind of like the Matrix, blue pill, red pill. The system of counterintention isn't necessarily pleased or delighted that there are those who have come here specifically to be the counter to the counterintention. And at particular moments on our journeys, the journeys of those who are here to be the counter to the counterintention, to be of divine service, capital S. Our lives aren't necessarily lived for us. Our lives are very often lived for the greater good, the highest good of the collective, or the collectives, depending on how multidimensional you want to get in this conversation. And if I'm going through a moment right now where I've approached a threshold, and if I pass that threshold, it'll be much more challenging to remain a hermit. The system of counterintention will pound me to the ground if it can to keep me in that state of resentment and resistance toward the world. And so today's experience was very jolting and very jarring. And at the same time, it was necessary. If any of you listening to this are wishing that you could forget what you remembered, hoping that you can game the system so that you can get out of fully living in your power while here. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying your experience is going to be like mine. But I am saying that it's really important. It's really important to consider who's resisting and who's fighting against being in alignment. The moment that you can surrender to an even greater undefined reality is the moment that you can liberate yourself to a greater degree from the limitations of this world. And it's those limitations that want to keep you held back, that want to keep you inhuman, that want to keep you in a state of fighting yourself. Because let's be clear, I'm not fighting the world. I'm not fighting the systems of domination and control. I'm not combating anything but myself. Was I able to find sacred neutral in this experience? Which would have been really helpful from the beginning, says the human. I was, for enough of a moment to begin to be able to connect the dots. The moment that we were on the return path home and I started to hear myself saying, stay on your path, was the moment that everything started to connect. Am I saying that you need to read so much into each experience you have? No. Am I saying that there are gifts and clues and buckets of gold lining your path as you walk it? Yeah. Totally up to you how you want to deal with that and how you want to interact with that and those gifts, that greater knowingness far beyond universal is sending your way. The reason I'm sharing this is to let you know that the time is now. You're not alone. This is not easy. Unless it is. Are these fixed ideas? Well, it's important not to be delusional in this journey. So I'm going to tell you that today was extremely hard for me. But when you look at what was hard, it was looking at myself that was hard. It was interacting with prompts and guides from places beyond this world that were sending me a message that was hard. It doesn't always have to be hard. Most often it isn't. I'm here on this island, on this mountain of obsidian for a reason. Forced vacation. Maybe to force me out of my delusion, maybe to force me out of the idea that I could game the system and abdicate my own responsibility. Yeah. You're allowed to choose no. You're allowed to choose hell no. You're allowed to run the other way, but you're running away from yourself. That's important to recognize. You're running away from yourself. You're more than welcome to do that. I am far from someone who's going to judge you for that. But changing this reality, ushering in the new, being those who are here to build the systems and infrastructures to support the ushering in of a new world, of a new reality, isn't for the faint-hearted. Finding community and finding people who you can talk to as you work out and through your journey is a very, very important part of the process. So whether it be listening to these videos, which will not always be so about the resistance, is one way of doing it. Finding your communities is one way of doing it. But find your way and get back on your path if you veered off of it. Find your path in the first place if you are at a point where you're ready to remember. And know that you're not